Okay, my 10 expert tips for first-time home buyer. Tip number one, okay, you need to plan your finances. How are we going to do that? We're going to start out by saving money for a down payment. Now, your down payment can range anywhere from 0 to 20%. Okay, VA and then USDA down payment requirement is 0%. FHA is 3.5%, and conventional can range anywhere from 3 to 20% of the purchase price of the home. Okay, next, let's talk about down payment assistance grants. You can apply to see if you can get a grant, and if you get approved, then that's great. But I ask you, please take a look at the more monthly payments with or without the grant, because sometimes the payments will be a little higher if you get the grant than it would be if you just got a traditional loan product. Also, asking the seller for concessions. Be careful, because sometimes seller may say yes, and oftentimes the seller may say no. So you can't really factor that in. Okay, so I would say you need to save around 3.5% of whatever home price you're looking at. That'll be a safe bet to save for a down payment. Okay, let's talk about closing costs. Closing costs is separate from the purchase of the home and your mortgage payments. These are the payments that you got to pay to just close on the loan in order to get the house. So I recommend you budget anywhere from 5 to 7% of the purchase price of the house. Income, okay, you're gonna need income. You're gonna need at least 2 years of stable income, consecutive income, okay, with no gaps. Now, if you do have a gap, like for school or whatever, you go back to college, it's okay. You just make sure you go ahead and explain to the lender first that, hey, I started to working and I had to stop and I went back to school, so that way I know. So that's okay. Okay, but if you just stop working and then you don't come back, and next day you start back working, there's nothing in between, then you might have a little issues if you try to apply for a loan then. Okay, next, let's talk about the credit score. Okay, a conventional loan is around 620. Okay, FHA, you can start around 580 and go from there. Okay, VA is around 600, and also the conventional is probably going to start around 620. Okay, these are some of the general requirements I gave you, but each lender will have their own set of requirements. They will take a look at your income, the employment, your debt to income ratio. So I ask that you check around, check with multiple lenders, check with your bank, check with your mortgage broker, okay, to try to figure out which loan product will work best for you. Okay. Step two, hire a real estate agent. Listen, the seller's agent or the listing agent works for who? The seller, not you. So hire yourself a very seasoned real estate agent. That's why I come in handy. Hire me, I would help you. Okay, oftentimes hiring a buyer's agent is at no cost. But even if you enter into a buyer broker agreement with the buyer agent, listen, number one, you need to listen to this. Okay, the agent's first priority, right, is to seek commission or compensation from somewhere else. You are the last one on the totem pole to pay him. So please understand it. And when the listing agent takes you out to show you properties, he's probably going to show you a list of properties that the seller is willing to pay commission, and he's only going to take you out to show you those properties that the seller is not willing to pay you commission, only if you want to go out and see those properties. And at that point in time, yes, then you would have to consider, if you're willing to pay the agent a commission after that. But other than that, listen, the agent is going to seek commission from somewhere. That's good for you. That way you don't have to pay. So please share that with your friends. Okay, so what are you looking for in an agent? Okay, you're looking for somebody with experience, good communication skills, very knowledgeable, and very trustworthy, and also has patience and be very supportive. Listen, buying that property can be very stressful. So guess what? You probably gonna say some things, do some things, or just have those moments. So you're gonna need somebody that can understand you, work with you, and be able to take you through the finish line from the start of starting the process and to the end. And sometimes you need somebody to kind of help you manage that stress along the way. So that's where I come in handy. So hire me. All right, congratulations. We got pre-approved. So now let's start on this tip number 4. Start your house hunting. First of all, before you do anything, just stop and make a list of your needs and wants and provide that to your realtor. Now, your local realtor is probably going to go into the MLS, and he's going to use that, and he's going to start sending you some properties. Now, you sit down with your loved ones, you all figure out which property you want to see, and you give them back to your realtor. He'll set up the touring, and then we go out and see homes. Now, I'm telling you, we're not gonna go out and see 30 or 40 homes. That's just way too many. Okay, I recommend you narrow down your search between 3 and 5 or maybe 5 and 10. And as you go along, make sure you take your camera, take pictures and all that stuff so you can understand what addresses and what pictures, and take your notes so that way you can remember. Because trust me, if you see 10 homes, you see 5 homes, by the time you get back home, you don't have any of that stuff. All I'm seeing is about like the same home. So do that, and then understand you're going to have to make a compromise. There's no such thing as a perfect home. So be willing to offer up something. For instance, if you can get a kitchen and she can get the closet and you can skip this 3-car garage and maybe get a 2, that's a compromise. So work together to try to compromise to find that perfect home. Now that you've found your dream home, now we're going to move on to step number 5. Now we're ready to make an offer. Okay, now I know you heard people say, let me go home, let me sleep overnight, and let me think about it. Well, listen, if you find your dream home and everything fits, and you got all your needs and your wants out of the way, I recommend you go ahead and put the offer in. Just like during COVID, you would take a client out, they would see a home, they come back, let you know later in the afternoon, I want a house, and they call me up, hey, guess what? The house is no longer, just went under contract, it's pending, so we got to start all over again. Now you have a big disappointment. Now everybody's mad at you, or because you didn't make an offer or whatever. So if you find something you like, put the offer in, and so we can move forward. Okay, now there's 3 things that can happen when you put in an offer. Number one, the seller can either accept your offer. In that case, both of you all will sign the contract, as is contract, that is, and then we'll move forward. And second thing is, the seller may not like your offer, and he might reject it altogether. Especially this happens if, for instance, if you say he's selling his house for 400,000, and you want to come in and offer him like 300,000. I mean, that's like a insult to him or her. So guess what? They're probably just going to reject it altogether, or they can make a counter offer. And then the counter offer, what they can do is they can come back and say, I won't, since you asking for 390, well, what about 395? And if you say, okay, 395 is good, then guess what? You both sign, and then guess what? We're on the contract again. Now, or you can make a counter offer, okay, and you can counter back and say, well, instead of giving you 395, I will give you, let's go 392, something like that. And if they say yes, then we're still good. Okay. They sign, you sign, and we on the contract, and we move on to the next phase of a contract. Or you can say, hey, I don't want it. And guess what? The seller and the buyer cannot agree on the terms of a contract, and then we can move on. We just go ahead and look for another house. That's as simple as that. So don't worry. I mean, if you do, that's fine. That happens all the time. If you can't come to a contract agreement, but don't fret it. But the moral of the story here: if you do find a home you like, please put an offer and be willing to work with the seller, and we'll try to get something done so we can get on the contract. And normally it does take a little negotiating to get it done. So normally it's very rarely everything comes together at one time. So don't worry, don't stress about it. We'll get it done. All right, congratulations. The seller has accepted our offer, and we're all signed and on the contract. Now the clock begins. So now tip number 6, we have to do our due diligence. Okay, period. So what we're gonna do in our due diligence period, we're gonna go ahead and get a home inspection done. Here in Florida, we have about 15 days to have someone come in and inspect the home, you know, after the effective date when we sign the contract. If we don't get it done before the 15 days, and after 15 days, then the seller is not required to make any repairs at all. Okay, now, when you hire an inspector, okay, remember, you hire an inspector. So when you hire an inspector, the inspector is going to do what? The inspector is going to find something, because guess what? You hire him or her to find something. Okay, remember, inspectors are generalists. So they're going to find general things in the home, and they're going to create a report, and they're going to tell you what they found and what they recommend you do in order to fix it. Now, when it comes down to addressing the actual issues, if it's something dealing with electricity, we need an electrician. Something dealing with plumbing, we need a plumber. Something dealing with a roof, we need a roof. Okay, so the other things you might encounter, let's say if you walk in the house and you look up, you might see like a little rain, wet water stain in the roof. And that could be from a prior leak from who knows when, and the seller could have addressed it a long time ago, and it could be whatever. But if you feel that you think there's water and you want to inspect for mold, then yeah, you can ask for, you can get a mold test, you can get an air quality test, you can get a lead test, you can get a radon test. Remember, all this is totally up to you, but it's all out of your pocket. Also, during this time frame, we're going to start shopping for insurance quotes. Okay, and sometimes you may have a additional requirements, such as you might need, flood insurance, you might need fire insurance, you might need earthquake insurance, you might need hurricane insurance. But all of that stuff, if it's additional, trust me, your lender is going to tell you, you know what you're going to need. Now, what you need to do once you get your inspection report, you need to sit down and, you know, review it and review it with your realtor. And you guys are going to go over the report together, and you're going to decide, you know, what items you're going to go ahead and ask the seller to address, right? And the realtor is probably going to go over and say, well, he's going to go over he or she's going to go over the things and tell you that this is cosmetics. Let's not worry about it. For instance, if you got a stain in the carpet, or you may see a little cracked tile, you know, that's a big difference. Then the AC is not working and the roof is leaking. So let's just understand the difference between cosmetics and those major things that we need to address. Okay. Okay. Now we're looking at the report, and first thing we're checking is mainly we're looking at the bones. Okay, we're gonna look at the roof. Okay, the roof is good. Okay, so the roof doesn't leak. Okay, great. Now what you need to take a look at it, what I actually do is take a look at the roof, and you need to see what the age of the roof is. If the roof is like 15 years old, okay, that may be a issue down the road. So if the roof is 15 years old and the life expectancy is, let's say, 20 years old, I mean, you still got 5 years left. Let's say if it's 18 years. If it's 18 years old, then you got to make a determination. You know, if you got the funds to replace the roof down the road, okay, great, you can move forward. But if you don't, then you might want to ask the seller to replace the roof. You know, next, you're looking at the electrical system. If it's all electrical things in the house is great, then great. But if you have an electrical issue, like some of the outlets not working or a light's not coming on, okay, good. We'll have address that with the seller, and the seller will find an electrician to come in. Same thing with plumbing. If you go through the plumbing, if you go in and you find a leak, okay, and then if it's a leak, we'll address that with the seller. Okay, the seller have a plumber come out and check that as well. AC is not working. Okay, great. We'll have a AC person come out and fix it. Age of the AC, same thing. If the AC is at the end of its life, okay, you got to make a determination. If you want to ask the seller to replace the AC, great. You know, if you figure out, okay, it'll work and we can replace it later, then great. Okay, the same thing with water heater. Okay, now in some of your inspections like FHA and VA, some of those things are required. You know what I mean? So FBA, you gotta have a good FHA, you gotta have a good roof. All electrical systems should be a go. All the plumbing gotta work. All the appliances gotta work. So all those things gotta work. And then guess what? If one of those things are not working, and if you're FHA and the VA loan, then what's going to happen is that the inspector will eventually may have to come back out and re-inspect those things before they will give you a go on your report so you can move forward with your loan. Okay, now, next, when you give the repairs back to the seller, they can do one or two things. They can agree to make the repairs and we drive on, right? Or they can reject to make the repairs, and I'm not making anything. I'm selling my house as is, and you take it or leave it, which is, you know, sometimes happen. Or you can make a counter offer, which means they may fix, you know, the AC, but they're not going to replace the cracked tile. So it all comes down to some kind of negotiation. And sometimes they may even give you a credit. For instance, if the seller is like in a rush and they don't have time to get it done, they may give you $1,000 or $2,000 towards credit so you can make the repairs after closing. So if you agree to all that right there, then great. And then we'll move forward with the next tip. If not, then we'll stop and we'll move forward with trying to find another home. But hopefully we'll try to make all this come together and we can work. The main thing is to try to keep the deal together. All right, congratulations. We got all our repairs made, and so we're going to move on to the next tip. The next one is a big one. We're talking about appraisal. Now, the appraisal in this area, which is going to be a charge that you're going to see on your bill, that's going to come from the lender, and it's roughly around $500 here in Florida. But you got to remember, the appraisal is to protect the bank. Okay, now the outcome. You can have three outcomes. Outcome number one, the appraised value comes in at the value of the house. So, for instance, if you have a $500,000 house, and the appraisal comes in at $500,000, then we're great. Okay. Now, number two, it can come in low. The appraisal can come in below. So if the house is 500,000 and the appraisal comes in at 490, there's a $10,000 gap. So A, we either go back to the seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller or Miss Seller, there's a $10,000 gap. Please lower the list price to 490 so we can move on with the loan. Or the seller might come back and say, hey, Mr. Buyer, I'm not changing my mind about the house. I want $500,000. So at that point, we'll have to look at, hey, A, we'll agree to pay the $10,000, or B, we'll just say, well, we're not gonna take it. It didn't appraise, and then we'll stop it, and then we'll move on with looking for another property. Or the last option, come in, the appraisal comes in at high, worth, you said 500,000, Mr. Seller, but your house is worth 520. So if that's the case, then we collect $20,000 in equity, but the price doesn't change. You still get it for 5, but you have $20,000 in equity already. So that's pretty good, right? So you have $20,000 and you haven't done any work. That's like money in the bank. So, but with FHA and VA loans, you got to remember the appraiser may come out and they may ask for some additional repairs. So, like I said, if you have an issue with the roof, they're gonna want that fixed. You have an issue with wires municipals, they're probably gonna want that fixed. If you have a leak in anything, faucet, toilet, or whatever, they're probably gonna want that fixed. Now, after all the repairs are made, then the appraiser may be required to come back out, and if he has to come back out, then generally it's a small fee. Normally it's a little bit over $100, but they would have to come back out in order to get before they give you the go ahead in order to go forward with the loan. So just keep that in mind. VA and FHA requirements are a little different from just a conventional loan. So if you got to come back out and you got to make some additional repairs, but don't worry, I forgot to tell you. Actually, what's going to happen? You're going to sign a VA FHA addendum, and once you sign the addendum, the seller is going to have a agreed upon amount anyway. It's normally whatever it is. It's not that much, maybe anywhere from $0 to $1,000, and that's pretty much cost most. It can take care of most of the repairs, unless it's something really big. So other than that, you should be fine. So let's think about that, and we're going to move on to the next tip. Okay, we made it. The appraisal came in, it's good to go. And guess what? We're getting ready to do our final walkthrough of the home. Okay, now when you go through to do the final walkthrough of the home, what you're looking for, you want the home to be in the same condition it was when you toured it, right? At the end, than it was when you started at the beginning. Everything should be pretty much the same. The grass should be cut. The swimming pool shouldn't be green. When you walk inside, um, the appliances that you saw should be there, right? The stove, the oven, the fans, the mounts on the wall, and all that other stuff. All that stuff, when you signed your contract, that was considered as personal property that was in the home when you started out, should be in the home when you close. Now, if it's not in the home, then somebody has a problem. Somebody's going to have to come up with the difference. So, for instance, if it was a stove and a stove missing, then hey, either the realtor, which most likely is going to be a realtor, or the seller, or a combination of both, is going to have to replace it with a stove. Same thing like a fridge. Now, keep in mind, if it was a Samsung and they go out and buy you some other Frigidaire and they put it in there, it don't have to be the same thing. But if it's a stove, they got to replace a stove. If it's a fridge, they got to replace a fridge. Okay, if it's a ceiling fan, they got to replace a ceiling fan. If it's a mount on the wall where the TV used to be and it's still there, they got to replace a mount. Okay, otherwise you don't have to close. Okay, they have to have the house in the same condition as what we agreed upon when we signed the contract, and everything should be the same as it was when we looked at the house when we toured it. If not, you need to have your real estate agent address that concern with the seller's agent to get those things uh, fixed. Okay, now congratulations, we made it. Everything looks good. You're gonna sign off on your walkthrough paperwork, and we're gonna move on because now we're just anticipating on the next thing, which all realtors love to hear, and that's called a clear to close. And you like to hear that too. It means everything is done, your loan is approved, so now all we gotta do is close. So let's move on to the next tip. I'm just elated because I just heard the word that I love to hear, and I know you love to hear too as a buyer. Clear to close. So when you get that, what's going to happen is that the lender is going to send you what they call a closing statement, a closing disclosure. They're going to send you that 3 days, most of the time 3 days prior to closing. And what you're going to do, you're going to open it up and you're going to take a look at it. Okay, and what you're going to do, you may look at the major things. You're going to look at the interest rate that you agreed upon when you fill out all your application and you're talking to your lender. You're going to look at the loan terms. You're going to look at the monthly payments. And you're going to also look at the cash to close, which is the big part. Now, the cash to close, also during that time frame, the title company, which is the one that's going to close and do all the paperwork and all that stuff for the loan, is going to send you, the buyer specifically, some wine instructions. Now, once you get the classic code closed and you get the wine instruction, you have to take that to your bank. No, don't give it to your realtor. Don't tell the title company to send it to your realtor because we want nothing to do with that. That's all confidential. So the title company will give you the wine instructions. You give the wine instructions to your bank, and then what's going to happen is whatever that dollar amount is, you're going to have that amount wired to the title company prior to us going up to the actual closing process. So now we have the clear to close. Now you know what to look for. Look over the closing disclosure, check out the figures and numbers. And if you have any questions, we'll call back to the lender or get the title company to answer. So that way when we go to on closing day, everything has already been explained. We looked at the numbers, there's nothing surprises. So considerably all we need to do is just sign. So look it over and you have no questions, now we've made it. So now let's go to closing day. All right. Congratulations. We finally made it. Tip number 10. We're at closing day. All right, closing day, what's going to happen is that we all are going to meet at the title company, right? And what we're going to do, we're going to review and sign those documents. Okay, now, normal process, if you're a buyer, you're looking at about 45 minutes, maybe 30, 45 minutes, sometime up to an hour. So yeah, you will be there for a while. Okay, now, what's going to happen, you got to remember, we ask that you receive the wiring instructions from the title company. So you got to make sure your bank has wired the money. So if you're dealing with a credit union or your bank, I recommend that you, as soon as you get the wiring instruction, like we talked about in our earlier, make sure you get a hold of the bank and see how long it's going to take in order for them to wire it. So do that early, so when you come to the title company, you don't have any issue with the funds. Second is, you can, if you get the cash to close and you get the amount, you can go to the bank and get a certified cashier check. You can bring that as well. So now once you do that and you come, now what you're going to do when you show up, okay, every person that's on the loan or every person that's like name is on the deed, you all got to provide, I would say, just bring 2 forms of ID, pictured ID, so they will scan it, take a copy of it, and give it back to you. Now, the next thing is your agent, your real estate agent needs to show up for this. Okay, when you sit down at the table, you're going to have you, your agent, and what we call the processor or the closer. Either one would be there. And what they're going to do, they're going to go over the contract in detail. Okay, they're going to cover the same numbers you saw when you reviewed your closing disclosure. And we just want to make sure all those numbers are the same. Now, if anything is different, okay, you make sure you get those questions addressed. And that's where your realtors come in handy. Okay, because a lot of it, your realtor's probably heard it 1,000 times. So as they go through it, if you have any questions, your realtor will be able to explain it to you. Now, once you get all your questions answered, you have signed all your documents, and guess what? Congratulations. You finally made it across the finish line and you get the keys to your brand new home. So congratulations. So now what's going to happen is you're going to take a lot of pretty signs and pictures with the signs and everything else. And we're going to post it to all our social media. We're going to tell our friends. So we're just stoked about everything because you just became a homeowner. And I hope I was able to take the stress out of this whole thing for you. All right, and there you have it. 10 expert tips for first-time homebuyers. Please hit the subscribe button below so you can continue to get valuable content. And again, thanks for tuning in.